Shalin is a senior from New York studying finance and information systems in the Carroll School of Management. At BC, Shalin helps lead Tech Trek Boston through the Information System Academy as the club's co-president and is also on the executive board of the BC Finance Academy. Shalin's passion for high-growth tech companies and venture capital was first sparked in the summer of 2013 when he had the unique opportunity to be the finance intern at Tumblr. His role allowed him to assist in the execution of Tumblr's $1.1 billion acquisition by Yahoo. Shalin has also worked as a summer analyst for MESA Global, a technology-focused investment bank, and for Stripes Group, a technology and consumer-focused venture capital fund in New York. Starting in August, Shalin will be joining the investment team at Spectrum Equity, a technology-focused growth stage venture capital firm in Boston. Without further ado, let's hear it for Shalin.
Thank you. Wow, this is amazing. First and foremost, thank you to John and Mooj and BCTalks for giving me this platform to come and speak to all of you today. And then most importantly, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming out to hear me speak today. This means the world to me. So let's get started. My name is Shalin Mehta, and I'm a senior at BC. I'm studying finance and information systems, and I've been thinking a lot lately. I've been thinking a lot about kind of as my time at BC comes to a close. I've been thinking about what have been the most important things to me, and it all revolves around one thing, and that's relationships. The relationships that I've been lucky enough to cultivate over the past 4 years with my friends, peers, mentors, and mentees have kind of enabled me to discern what it is that drives me, what it is that I think I want to do for the rest of my life, and in that process as well, enable others to figure out what they want to do. So I'm extremely grateful for that. And the reason why I'm here today is, title of my talk is Your Network is Your Net Worth, Cultivating Relationships and Discerning Your Passion. What I'm going to be discussing today is kind of the major takeaways that I've had during my time at BC in terms of cultivating these relationships and figuring out what is it that drives me, and I'd like to share with you what I think should drive you. The second thing I'd like to go over is this concept called the law of 33% that I came across about a year ago, and when I did, I was like, whoa, I've been living this for the past 3 years, finally found a name for it. So I'd like to present that to you and kind of my clarification of this concept and kind of how I've used it in my own life to cultivate these relationships and figure out what it is that drives me. And then last but not least, or not last but not least, third, I'd like to talk about my story and kind of how I've used the law of 33% to kind of get there. And then last but not least, kind of impart some best practices with you guys of kind of what I've learned over the past 4 years and what it is that's helped me got to the place that I have today. So kind of the first main takeaway that I've had from my time at BC is that statement right there. And I know that was the title of my talk, but I want to kind of dig deeper into the sentence. And it is, your network is your net worth. And I've heard this statement many a times, throughout my life. And whenever you think of this statement, you're like, oh, networking, going to events, meeting people, kind of, trying to get a job, so on and so forth. But as I thought about this statement more and more, I kind of came to a conclusion, and that is, when it's all said and done, right, at the end of life or at the end of your college career, your grades, you'll do well one semester, won't do well another semester for a whole slew of reasons. You'll make a little money when you start out in college, and then hopefully you'll make more money, or you'll lose all of it. So at the end of the day, money, grades, status, prestige, all of this is kind of arbitrary. It's transient. It comes and it goes. But I think the one thing that I've learned that is a constant is the relationships that you form with those around you. And I think we're extremely grateful to be at BC. And I want to preface my talk by saying that we're extremely privileged to be here and to have 9,000 young, passionate individuals like us, and then another 5,000 graduate students, and then a few hundred professors, and so on and so forth. So kind of that's the first takeaway I've had, is that when it's all said and done, your relationships are really what define you and what really give you worth, and they're constant. The second takeaway that I've had is, when it comes to building relationships and figuring out what it is you want to do, it's never too early, trust me. And more than that, it's going to take a lot of time, but that's okay. And when I mean, it is never too early, I mean, when most of us come to college, We always come in freshman year thinking about all the things that we want to do. But we're always thinking about the future, right? We're like, oh, when I become a junior or when I'm about to graduate, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I think that's the wrong approach. I think the time is now, right? For all you freshmen out there, it's never a better time than now. And for all you seniors out there, it's never a better time than now. And I really, really believe that. I think a lot of people come here saying, oh, I'll figure it out when I'm a junior. I'll figure it out when I'm a senior. That is not the right approach. It's never too early. Start now. I think the other thing that people kind of get caught up in is the fact that, apologies, just wanted to kind of show you guys this quote. This is one of my favorite filmmakers and YouTubers. His name is Casey Neistat, and the quote says, in life, you should only ever be doing one of two things, and that is figuring out what you're most passionate about, like finding your dreams in life, and then two, realizing those passions and realizing those dreams. Now, you may look at me now and be like, Shalin, beautiful quote, it's all great, but that's such a myopic view on life, right? Just looking at it in two ways. And I completely disagree with that, because I think everything kind of relates to what drives you and how you're going to go accomplish that, and with the people that you're going to go accomplish it with. So I really, really feel like it's never too early, and it's going to take time, right? If you were to find your passion in one day, whether that you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an actor, a venture capitalist, whatever you want to be, if you were to come home one day and be like, wow, I really want to do that, that's not the right approach. You have to spend time. You have to take out the time to meet with people, to really understand what it is that they do, what it is that drives them, and then kind of come to that conclusion. I think the other thing that I've realized during my time at BC, and I think this quote kind of encapsulates the attitude of many of my peers and myself at one point, and it is, the quote says, don't let your inability to do everything undermine your determination to do something. And I think, most of us when we come to BC, we kind of, as I said before, have this sense of complacency that, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out when we're juniors, when we're seniors, when we have to. As I said, that is not the right approach. You really want to start doing that now. And you might look at me and be like, so are you telling me to find the path to the most prestige and money? No, absolutely not. What I'm telling you is, no matter what you want to do, it's going to take time, and you're going to need to invest that time with people, with listening, with learning, and figuring out what it is that really drives you. And now you may ask, Shalin, how do I do that? How do I kind of spend time with people, figure out what I want to do? This all sounds really great and all, but how do I do this? And the simple thing is asking for help. I think that's the one thing college students do the least of, and myself included when I first came here, was asking for help. We go to Boston College. There are 14,000 students, 9,000 undergrads, 5,000 grad students. There are 172,000 BC alumni all over the world. Chances are there's one doing something that you hope to do or want to do. So we have this amazing global network that we have access to at any point in time. Second, you have your peers around you, right? Your peers that are kind of pursuing the same things as you and doing what you want to be doing. Then you have 1,359 instructors, of which 786 are full-time faculty. They literally get paid for you to help you find your passion. So use them, ask for help. Don't be too proud or too shy to do that. Because I think a lot of people come into college and they say, hey, I'm not qualified yet to go be a doctor or to go be an actor. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think the right approach is finding the right people who've had those experiences, who can enable you, and asking them for help, asking them, how did you go about this experience? How did you go about approaching this? And I think, in recap, those are the three main takeaways from a high level that I've come across in terms of building relationships and figuring out what you want to do. And those are kind of relationships, they have holding power. Money comes and goes, grades come and go, but the people who you associate yourselves with and invest in are your true, kind of derive your true value. The second main takeaway, it's never too early to kind of figure out what you want to do, and it's going to take time. So get ready for that, but that's okay, right? It's supposed to take time. And then third, ask for help. You have all these amazing people around you. As you can see, this room is really filled, and I'm so happy right now. And I can look to so many faces here that have helped me and that I've had the good fortune of collaborating with as well. Now, the big concept that I want to impart with all of you is the law of 33%. And some of you probably already know this concept. It was actually coined by this motivational speaker and entrepreneur, Tai Lopez. And essentially, the law of 33% is it requires one to spend a third of their time with those who can enable them or their mentors, a third of their time with their peers or kind of those on your level, and lastly, and I think most importantly, a third of your time with those that you can enable or that you can share your experiences with and help. And I when I came across this, I was like, wow, this is really, really powerful. However, I have my qualms with this law, and that's what I want to clarify right now. Even though this law is, very compartmentalized, right? 33% here, 33%, 33% here. I don't agree with the rigidity of the law. I think there's a lot of mobility, and there's a lot of room for cross-collaboration amongst your mentors, your peers, and your mentees. And that's kind of reflected in this quote, right? Happiness is only real when it's shared. If you were to just think about what someone could give you and not what you could give them, or what you can give someone, but not think about what they could in turn give you, I think that's a very myopic view. So the point I'm trying to make is, you want to spend 33% of your time with your mentors, 33% of your time with your peers, like all of you, and 33% of your time with people that you can enable or mentees. And then what I've added is kind of, this mobility or flexibility in this law, such that the peers can not only help their mentees, but the mentees can help their peers in the same way that a mentor can help a peer can help their mentor as well. So now I've bored you with all this theory, and now I'd like to give you some real life experiences that I've kind of been through that kind of match up with this law and this mobility that I'm talking about. And before I go into each of those and kind of go through some of my mentors, some of my peers, and some of my mentees, and before I even get to that, I want to preface it by saying, by no means is this an exhaustive list of all my mentors, peers, and mentees. I've been very lucky to meet a lot of really, really cool people. These were just that fit really well with the story. So for all the people that I did not mention, just know that I'm forever grateful for all that you've done for me. And I hope that I can, continue to be grateful whenever I see you. So now, kind of before we delve into kind of my relationship with the law of 33%, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. So that little boy right there on the bottom left, that's me. And that's my mom on the right. And kind of just a little background on me, I was born and raised in Queens, New York. My family immigrated from India in the late 90s. And I'm essentially first generation. I'm a first generation college student. But the one thing that I knew was that I loved business. I loved interacting with people. I loved meeting new people. And was lucky enough. I think my most important mentor of my life is my mother, and that's why I have a photo up there of me and her, because she's always encouraged me to pursue whatever I want to pursue and kind of been there to guide me through each of the crossroads that I face in life. So fast forward now. Boom, boom. That's me right there. I know I'm still pretty stylish, I know that. But so yeah, here I am, almost a senior. I have 49 days left of senior year. This is kind of crazy. But kind of as my time at BC comes to a close, what I want to kind of communicate to you guys is that I've met some really cool people and been a part of some really, really cool organizations, such as Boston College's Tech Trek program, the Boston College Finance Academy, and then kind of BC's Pulse program. And as a result of those three programs, I've been very, very lucky to work with some really, really cool people during my summers outside of BC. Some companies you've probably heard of, like Tumblr, and then some really, really cool venture capital firms that invest in some really cool innovative companies, because that's kind of been my interest. Now, I just want to take a step back for a second. I just told you that my passion was kind of technology and venture capital. But when I came to BC, even though I look pretty confident in that photo, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I came to BC being like, hey, I'm in the Carroll School of Management. Should I do finance, marketing, information systems, operations? Should I drop out of CSOM, do music? I didn't know what I wanted to do. The one thing I knew is that I loved interacting with people and making people happy. And I was lucky enough to meet my first mentor. So what I'm going to do now is kind of go through a few of my more important mentors, a few of my peers, and a few of the mentees that I've kind of been able to work with over the past 4 years. And we'll start off with the mentors. My first mentor is a man by the name of Professor John Gallaugher. For those of you who don't know Professor Gallaugher, he heads the Tech Trek program at BC. It's kind of our field study program where students get to go to New York, Boston, Ghana, and California and meet with really cool BC alumni and technology companies and learn more about that. And more than that, I think I took Professor Gallaugher's computers and management class my freshman year, and my mind was literally boggled. The class kind of dealt with entrepreneurship, venture capital, technology, all of my passions, and it got me really, really interested about how really, really young, cool companies can impact millions of people. And kind of the other thing that Professor Gallaugher has been really kind of pivotal kind of in my development is giving me the confidence that I can really, literally do anything, or that I have the opportunity to do anything that I want. And I want to thank him, first and foremost, for giving me that confidence to pursue kind of technology and then kind of go after whatever I wanted. And what's really funny is I ended up doing Tech Trek New York my freshman year at BC, which was spring of freshman year. And I was lucky enough to go visit a company called Tumblr. And weirdly enough, as I was waiting in the lobby for the rest of the group to arrive, given the fact that I'm from New York, I ran into the CEO, David Karp, who happens to be my next mentor that I'd like to talk about. And it was a short interaction that I had with him. It was a 2-minute interaction. But 5 weeks later, I was lucky enough to get a role to be the company's finance intern. And what's even funnier is when I got back from BC, I was going to kind of map out my commute because I live a little outside the city. And it was weird, as I was walking to the office, I ran into him again. And it was just the weirdest thing ever, where he was like, "Hey, I've seen you before." I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be working for you this summer. Let's do some cool work." And cool work was what we did. The craziest thing was, a week and a half into my gig, I remember this very vividly. David kind of addressed the entire company. So for those of you who don't know what Tumblr is, it's kind of a social network where you can follow blogs, and it's really cool. I was an avid user before I ended up working for the company, and a week and a half into my gig, David kind of addressed the whole company, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to be acquired for $1 billion by Yahoo." And I was like, "Whoa, that's incredible." And the reason why it was incredible was because I was a wide-eyed, naive 18-year-old as a part of a team of 4 people. It was literally myself, the CFO, and 2 other managers. And the fact that such a big kind of transaction happened in the company's history meant that I would be put to work. And I remember very vividly after he had announced it, he came up to me and he's like, "You're going to need to help us out here." And I felt very empowered at that time, because I think that interaction was a sort of kind of microcosm for what David represented and why he's such an important mentor to me. Just a little background on David, which I think is extremely relevant here, is that he dropped out of high school, started Tumblr when he was 18 years old, and then eventually sold it when he was 25 for $1 billion. And at one point, Tumblr was used on a monthly basis. They had over 200 million monthly active users. And I think it's surpassed that even today. So what David really taught me was it didn't matter how old you were. As long as you had really cool ideas and you could execute on them, you could literally do anything you wanted. And I became really close to David over the summer, and I'm extremely grateful to him for all that he's done for me. And there's one more thing that he ended up doing, which kind of brings the story kind of full circle. And what that was as the summer came to a close, David kind of realized that I really enjoyed entrepreneurship, but what I enjoyed even more was venture capital investing, kind of meeting all different types of entrepreneurs, kind of looking across the entire technology landscape. And he's like, "Shalin, you need to meet this one guy. I think you'd really get along with him." I was like, "Oh, who's this, David?" He's like, "Yeah, he was my first investor and one of my dearest friends." And I was like, "Oh, who is it?" He's like, "Yeah, it's a guy named Bijan Sabet." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's a really cool name. Maybe I should get to know him." David ended up making the intro, and the crazy part about this story is, that's Bijan right there. Apart from being a founding general partner at a really big venture capital firm called Spark Capital, and being the first investor in Tumblr, Twitter, Foursquare, and OMG Pop, and a whole slew of other companies, he's a BC alumni. And my mind was literally blown when I found that out. And Bijan is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. He, after my time at Tumblr, I got to go visit him at their offices on Newberry Street, and he spent 2 hours with me just kind of imparting all of his knowledge about technology and venture capital. There were like literally whiteboards all over the office, and he's just like teaching me everything that he knew for 2 hours. And kind of what I learned from Bijan was that I really, really enjoy learning about different kind of landscapes in technology, meeting new entrepreneurs, and kind of understanding the dynamics behind investing. So I'm very grateful to Bijan, and more importantly, David, for making that introduction and kind of creating that mobility within, that was a mentor to him, and he was kind enough to introduce me to one of his mentors so that I could be a mentee of his. So it was just really, really cool that all worked out. My next mentor is a guy by the name of Ryan Leslie. For those of you guys who don't know Ryan, before I get started about Ryan, I met Ryan when I was at Tumblr. He's a Grammy-nominated musician who went to Harvard when he was 15, graduated when he was 19. He was essentially a child prodigy. He's been one of my musical heroes, and I'd been trying to get in touch with him for like the last 3 years. I kept emailing him. I probably sent him like 25 emails. Never got a response. And then over the summer, I sent him an email at like 3:30 a.m. I remember this very vividly. I was like, hopefully he responds to this. And he responded at like 3:45 a.m. He's like, hey, Shalin, like we should definitely meet. You should come to my place in New York City. And at first I was like, wait, so you're telling me a Grammy-nominated artist who's worked with the likes of Kanye West, Jay-Z, and Beyonce wants to meet with me, like an 18-year-old kid who doesn't really have much credibility? I was kind of shocked. So I ended up going to meet him. That's a photo from that meeting. This was about 3 years ago. And it was an amazing meeting. I'd like to call it the meeting of the minds. We discussed everything from like technology, music, life, and kind of the biggest thing that I've learned from Ryan, right, is he has this concept of contacts as a currency. And I don't completely agree with the characterization, but I think it kind of touches upon the same point that I was talking about earlier, right? Your network is your net worth. And for him, the people who've enabled him to become a musician and pursue that are really the most important people in his life. And in the same way, I mirror that view in that I'm extremely grateful to all of my mentors, whether that's John Gallaugher, Ryan Leslie, Bijan Sabet, or even Professor Wesner, who's sitting in the audience. Thank you so much for coming out. It means the world to me. But yeah, going back to Ryan. Met with Ryan, had these amazing conversations, taught me all about kind of how he thought that technology was going to disrupt the music industry, kind of so on and so forth. And I came away from this interaction, I was like, wow, this guy's really, really smart. I think we should bring him to BC. And with the help of Corduroy, we brought Ryan to BC in this exact room just about a few years ago. He gave a talk to about 120 kids, I think. You can see that's me right next to Ryan. The picture's a little blurry. We got James, who's a speaker here today as well. And then Will, who I'm going to get to a little later. But point that I'm trying to make is I got to meet Ryan. He kind of imparted all this wisdom on me, and I was lucky enough to bring him to BC and kind of help him impart what I thought was really cool stuff to a certain portion of the BC population. So I'm really grateful to Ryan for all that he's done for me. And I wanted to kind of take it one step further, right? He'd been so generous with his time, kind of spending time with me multiple times a year, as well as coming all the way out to BC. So I was kind of trying to find a way where I could kind of help enable him or help him achieve a goal that he wanted to. And I was lucky enough to do that. About a year and a half ago, Ryan founded a company called Disruptive Multimedia. It's essentially a software company that helps connect fans directly to their artists. And he was out raising a venture capital round. So he pinged me one night. He's like, hey, Shalin, I'm raising money for my company. Would you happen to know anyone who's in the venture capital sphere? I knew some people in the venture capital sphere. And for those of you who know me really well, you guys know that it's a pretty tight-knit community. So I actually coincidentally ended up working for venture capital firm the same summer that he reached out to me. And I was lucky enough to make the intro to that venture capital firm. And I think Ryan was so shocked he was shocked by the fact that I made this introduction to the point where he gave me an Instagram shout out. And I'm like a total fanboy of this person. And he's not only become my friend and a mentor, but he took the time out of his day to kind of give me a shout out. So I was just, jumping for joy when I saw this, and took me a long time to process the fact that I could enable someone like him and kind of, go back to the flexibility that exists, right? That as a mentee, you can enable your mentor just as likely as your mentor can enable you. So that's Ryan. Now I want to kind of go on to my peers, right? And my first peer is in the audience today. He's an individual by the name of William Bolton, one of my best friends. Will, where are you? How you doing, Will? Good to see you. Thank you for coming. I met Will freshman year on Newton campus. He lived in Hardy, I lived in Cushing. We were both on the bus, and I remember very vividly, we were on the bus, and Will had like his longboard in his hand and like all these like Ziploc bags with CDs, which was his first project at the time. And he came up to me, he's like, hey, you should give a listen to this. I did. And to cut a long story short, he's one of my best friends today. And apart from him being one of my best friends, I've seen him grow as an artist over the past 3 years, and he's done some really, really cool things since then. He's opened up for artists like Hoodie Allen, Shwazy, has over 15,000 followers on SoundCloud, 3 million streams on SoundCloud. He's just growing really, really fast, and I'm really grateful that I've got to be there with him as he's grown that way. And as me and Will have had really, really cool conversations, I always thought that, who would be really, really cool to connect with Will? Ryan Leslie. Because Ryan's an artist who really believes in tech and, kind of believes in the power of tech and the democratization of music. And I knew that Will was really, really leveraging the internet and SoundCloud to kind of gain a following and build a fundamental fan base. So I was like, this obviously makes total sense. So I introed Ryan and Will, and now they're really, really good friends. Ryan is a mentor to Will, and they're also really, really close. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that, kind of look at my peer and one of my best friends and kind of see that I had a mentor that would be extremely relevant and helpful to him and kind of make that connection as well. And there's something that I'd like to highlight at this point is you've seen how small the world can be. And I think what I kind of deduce from that is that these connections have momentum. They have the momentum to kind of bring people together who would not have been brought together previously. So I think momentum, or the concept of momentum when you're making connections and building relationships, is really, really important. Kind of moving on to some more peers that I've been lucky enough to collaborate with. I've been able to do that through the IS Academy and Finance Academy. They're essentially organizations that act as a liaison between BC and the greater financial services community and technology community in Boston. And I help lead Tech Trek Boston, which is kind of under the umbrella of Information Systems Academy, and I help also lead the Finance Academy. And through these leadership roles, I've been able to meet some really, really smart, passionate people. And what I've been able to do with these people from a collaboration standpoint is kind of share my knowledge, kind of share all the mistakes that I've made, right? All the flubs that I've had, and give them any advice that I can, but also making introductions, right? In the same way that I made with Will and Ryan, making those relevant connections where they make sense. And I say this very proudly, and I don't know if they're in the room, but 7 of my kind of peers that I've been able to collaborate with this summer will be working at all of those companies. And it just blows my mind to think that I've been lucky enough to work with all these people who are going on to do things in venture capital. Kelsey Bishop, if you're in the room, you're awesome. I'm very excited about your future. Roshan Joshi doing city investment banking. Nikhil Kanithkar doing FTI consulting. Akash Garg doing Goldman Sachs. And then, I don't know if he's in the room right now, but another crazy connection was this past summer I worked at a venture capital fund called the Stripes Group. And one of their portfolio companies is a company called Pond 5. So one of the companies that they've invested in. Turns out the CFO of the company is a BC alum, and he happens to be looking for someone who's young, hungry, and passionate to be on his team. And I've known Romel for a decent part of my life. He's actually from the same part of Queens as me, and it only made sense to make that introduction. And Romel's going to be working under the CFO this summer as a freshman. So I think it's just incredible, kind of the amount of intelligent peers that kind of exist at BC and how we can all help each other if we really, really want to. Next, and this is probably the most important part of my talk, is about kind of the mentees that I've been able to kind of work with. And kind of the conduit for the mentee relationships that I've cultivated has been through Pulse. For those of you who don't know what the Pulse program is, it's a service learning program that also fulfills your philosophy and theology core, where students go in for about 10 hours a week and kind of serve at a whole slew of placements. My placement was at the ACC, which is another course to college, and what was really cool about my experience was I got to be a college advisor to 2 students who are actually sitting in the room today, Mike and Demetrius. I'm so glad you guys can make it out here today. And what's really cool about ACC is they're a pilot preparatory high school where the goal is to kind of help the kids matriculate into a 4-year university. Having said that, that's a very lofty and ambitious goal. About 90% of the students come from underrepresented minority backgrounds or kind of underprivileged backgrounds. So it's somewhat of a challenge. And I was lucky enough to meet Mike and Demetrius and work with them through their college process. And I remember vividly telling the both of them that you guys should definitely apply to BC. Like, it's an amazing place to go to school, so on and so forth. At first, they kind of looked at me and they're like, BC, I don't know. I was like, no, we're definitely applying to BC. And definitely applying to BC. And crazy enough, they both go to BC now. They're sophomores at BC, pursuing their passions in the sciences. And there they are, right there, right outside of Gaston. I wish they got a better view of Gaston. It's such a beautiful building. But yeah, so both of them go to BC now, and I was privileged enough to work with them and kind of help them realize what it is that they're really kind of passionate about or what drives them. And what they taught me in turn, they taught me how to be a better mentor, but also how to be a better mentee. Because there were times where I thought that, when we were going through the college process, in terms of writing supplements and essays, that they would just be like, hey, I'm happy with this 3rd or 4th draft. But they kept going, they kept iterating. And what I've learned from them is that I need to keep iterating, and that this is a journey, not a destination, that I need to continuously be improving, seeking out better mentors, continuously try to help my peers, and then also continuously try to find mentees who can also add value to me and teach me a lot of really, really cool things. So that's the law of 33% kind of through my lens, right? I went through all of my mentors, kind of some of my peers, and then kind of some of the mentees that I've been lucky enough to work with, and the flexibility that exists in kind of this structure, right? That is 33% of your time with mentors, 33% of your time with peers, and then 33% of your time with mentees. And then now I want to kind of impart some best practices with you. And I'll just kind of run through these fairly quickly. Some of these may be obvious, but I think it's very important to highlight. The first one is, here at BC, we're here to cultivate ourselves into men and women for others, and we should just do that. And the resources are available to do that. I would recommend that people find what they're interested in. Join interest-based organizations, whether that be the Information Systems Academy, Finance Academy, BC Model UN, it doesn't even matter. Go find what you're passionate about. And people think, hey, I'm not in the Carroll School, so can I join a business-focused club? Yes, you can. Chances are you're probably smarter than the average CSOM kid as well. So don't let that stop you. These organizations are open to everyone. So don't let that stop you. The next thing, join, there are a whole slew of service programs at BC, like Pulse, which I was lucky enough to do, Arupe, Big Brother, for Boston, and there are probably so many really good ones that I'm missing out on. Go join those. Go enable others. Go find a way to learn from people and help people as well. And then this one I want to really highlight. So kind of my law of 33% journey has been encapsulated by these 2 things right here. Kind of sharing advice and knowledge, which is just a better way of saying, telling my peers all the mistakes I've made and telling them don't make the same mistakes I made. And then also making key introductions where it sees fit, right? Sometimes the best thing you can do is just connect 2 people, because the results from connecting those 2 people can have kind of infinite possibilities for you yourself. Then the next thing is, ask for help. I was talking about this earlier. People are too scared to ask for help. Go out, seek out your professors, seek out your peers, upperclassmen, seek out alumni. We have LinkedIn. There should be no excuse that you can't find someone who's doing what you think you want to do or what you actually want to do. So ask for help and ask really good questions, right? People love talking about themselves. That's what I'm doing here right now. But be curious and ask them about their experience, because that's all we have at the end of the day, right? Experiences and sharing those with each other. Next thing, and I kind of harped upon it earlier, leverage the BC Alumni Network. There are 172,000 of us. Most of them doing really, really cool things. You're going to find someone who's doing exactly what you want to do. And the best way to go about it is literally cold email them. Email them out of the blue, but if you do, have a specific ask. Don't email them asking them for a job. Never do that. Email them asking about what got them to where they are, why they're doing what they're doing. And I think you'll learn way more about what it is they actually do than just asking them for a job and kind of, making sure you hit off all the checks on the bucket list of getting a job and kind of doing all of those things. This is another really important thing. Always opt for the in-person interaction. Phone calls are great, but I think in the 21st century, it's even that much more important to meet people in person and really understand what their experiences are, who they are, and what drives them. And I think that can really help you. So always go for the in-person interaction. And last but not least, all of you who know me know that I'm really aggressive, and I urge you to be really aggressive. It's worked out for me to some extent, and I hope it keeps working out for me. But really be aggressive. Don't be afraid to hear a no. Like just a little tidbit. When I was applying to Tumblr my freshman year, I emailed 300 companies, and I got rejected from 298 of them. I heard 298 no's, one after the other. So I started recruiting in January, and by, I think, May, I remember this very vividly. I was moving out of college May 13th, and I heard 298 no's, really discouraged, and kind of just finished up my process with Tumblr. And then on May 13th, I got a call being like, hey, we'd love to have you be the finance intern at Tumblr, which essentially changed my life. So you will hear a lot of no's, and that's completely fine. It's going to take a lot of time. It took me 4 months, and every consecutive year, it's even taken me longer to figure out what it is that I really want to do, what is it that drives me. So don't be afraid to hear no, persevere, and realize that it's a numbers game. Eventually, you'll find someone or find something that really kind of resonates with you. And some final thoughts. If there's one thing that I want you guys to take away from this presentation, it's that find those who will enable you and be someone who will enable others. That's the first thing. The second thing is excellence or happiness is not a destination, it's a journey. Really understand that it's a journey, it's a continuous process. You have to continuously get better. It's not like, oh, I've gotten this internship or job, I'm done. It's just the beginning. Figure out how you can help others, how you can help those who have enabled you, and how you can enable your peers as well. And then last but not least, the last thought that I want to leave you guys with is, don't be afraid that you're giving too much. Be afraid that you're not giving enough. Thank you.